Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every soul's journey when the world suddenly slows down. The noise that once consumed you fades into silence, and something stirs from within, a subtle, soft whisper, as if your soul, tired of being ignored, finally clears its throat and speaks. You don't always notice it at first. It might sound like a pause in thought, or a fleeting sense that something about this life you're living isn't quite aligned. But if you let that whisper linger, it grows, and in that stillness, you awaken not from sleep, but from a dream you've been unknowingly tangled in for years. And what is that dream? It's the story we've told ourselves over and over again, without question, that life should be perfect, that we should be happy all the time, that fear means danger, that success is linear, that if you just work hard enough, love hard enough, hope hard enough, everything will turn out the way you imagined. But it doesn't always, and that isn't failure, that's the truth. When I sat down and truly examined the worries that had consumed me over the past 30 days, I noticed something so eye-opening that I laughed, genuinely laughed at myself. Because 90% of what I had lost sleep over never happened. The anxiety, the racing thoughts, the made-up scenarios in my head, they were all fiction. Stories with no ending, scenes that never played out. And what about the remaining 10%? Yes, some things did go wrong. Life showed up in its chaotic way, but even then, those moments didn't ruin me. They didn't shatter my core. I handled them. I adapted. I survived. So I asked myself a difficult question. If I worried so much about something that either didn't happen or I couldn't control anyway, then why do we worry at all? That's when the real shift happened. Something deep inside me in a way that left me broken, but in a way that finally allowed the light to enter. I let go. I let go of the illusion that I was ever in control of everything. I let go of the toxic belief that life had to be one-sided, that people would always treat me kindly, that my plans would always go smoothly, that my dreams had to arrive on my timeline. And in releasing that fantasy, I reclaimed my peace. Because here's the truth. As raw as it is, life isn't designed to always feel good. Not everyone you meet will be kind. Not every day will be easy. Not every moment will make sense. For every breath of joy, there may be a sigh of sorrow. For every rise, a fall. For every gain, a loss. This is the price of existence in a world of duality. This is the law of nature, the balance of yin and yang, the divine dance of opposites. It's uncomfortable to accept that, but once you do, once you surrender to the flow of how life actually works, not how you wish it worked, something inside you aligns. You stop resisting, you stop fighting the current, and instead of drowning in the illusion of control, you learn to float in trust. Trust doesn't mean you'll always understand what's happening. Trust means you'll survive it. We often think we were put here to win, to conquer, to prove ourselves. But what if the real purpose was to experience, not just the joy but the pain, not just the love but the heartbreak, not just the clarity but the confusion? Because in experiencing everything, we begin to understand something much deeper than success or comfort. We begin to understand life itself, and that is the blessing most people miss. The blessing is not in the fact that everything goes your way. The blessing is in your ability to feel, to live, to be no matter what. You are not here to escape pain. You are here to transcend it. But so often, we forget this. We get trapped in roles, identities, masks. We forget that we are more than the job, the title, the relationship, the bank account, the number of followers. We begin to believe we are the story we've been telling ourselves, and that's where the suffering begins. You see, it's not the outer world that causes most of our pain. It's the story we attach to it, the interpretation, the meaning we place upon it. That's why one person can lose everything and still smile, while another has everything and still feels empty. So I invite you to do something powerful, something liberating. Step outside of yourself, just for a moment. Imagine that you are the director, and the character you're watching is the version of you that's stuck in the movie of your life. Watch yourself. Observe. What would you say to that character? How would you guide them? Where would you tell them to stop wasting energy? When you do this, something magical happens. You gain perspective. You stop identifying so much with the pain, and you begin to see the lesson. You stop being so consumed by the struggle, and you begin to notice your strength. You stop shrinking into the moment and you rise above it. This is how transformation begins, not with a loud voice or a dramatic shift, but with a quiet change in perception, a small willingness to see differently, But let's not pretend it's easy. Your old patterns, your limiting beliefs, they don't go down without a fight. They're clever, they're seductive, they whisper in your ear, reminding you of your past, your failures, your shame. They wrap around you like a blanket, warm and familiar, even though they're suffocating you. And sometimes, without realizing it, you invite them back in. So how do you break free? The first step is awareness. You must see the pattern, call it out, name it, shine a light on it. Because what you hide, you empower, but what you expose, you can change. The second step, replace it. You don't fight old patterns by resisting them, you fight them by building new ones, stronger ones, healthier ones. You create new neural pathways through repetition, action, and commitment. It's not about perfection, it's about persistence. You want to become disciplined, show up every day, even when you don't feel like it. You want to become peaceful, practice silence, even when your mind is loud. You want to grow, choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong. It's not about doing one grand thing. It's about doing small, intentional things over and over again till they become who you are. And as you grow, you must continuously ask yourself, who am I becoming? Not in theory, but in truth. Who are you in this moment? Under pressure, in discomfort, in uncertainty. What version of yourself are you choosing to be? Because your character is not defined by your comfort, it's revealed in your chaos. I've been in rooms full of people and felt more alone than when I was by myself. I've smiled in front of thousands while screaming on the inside. And I've realized that loneliness doesn't come from the absence of people, it comes from the absence of connection, and connection starts within. The more you seek validation from outside, the more disconnected you become from your soul. The more you chase admiration, the more you starve authenticity. The more you look outward, the more you lose what truly matters, your relationship with yourself. You cannot run from this. You cannot silence it with noise or numb it with distraction. Sooner or later, you must come home to yourself, and when you do, you will discover something beautiful. There is a source, a power, a presence that has never left you. Call it what you want: God, the universe, divine energy, the infinite, the creator. It doesn't matter. What matters is this: you are not alone. You are never alone. You were carried, you were held, you were chosen. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to prove it. You just need to feel it. And in that feeling, you will remember who you truly are, not the version the world tried to shape you into, but the essence that was there before you ever learned to doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, there is something remarkable about truly understanding your origin, not the physical place you were born into, not the cultural background that shaped you, but the origin beneath all of that, the source, the essence, that single unifying pulse that breathes life into all living things. It's not about religion, doctrine, or philosophy. It's about connection. Deep, unwavering connection. A thread that exists between you and the universe. You and every soul walking this earth. You and every star glowing silently above. We try to define it with words, but words fall short. Words are fences around boundless things. We say God, and we picture a figure. We say universe, and we imagine galaxies. But the truth, it's beyond all of that. Because what breathes through you and through me, what created the oceans and carved the mountains, what lives in the fire of every sunrise and the silence of every night that cannot be named, it can only be known, and not with the mind, but with the soul. That's why when you sit quietly, when the world is asleep and your thoughts slow down, sometimes you feel it. You don't see it, but you know it. A presence, a peace, a belonging. In those moments, you are not chasing anything. You are not proving anything. You are simply being, and in that being, you come home. We spend so much of our lives searching for success, for love, for meaning. But what if what you're looking for isn't outside you at all? What if every road you've walked, every tear you've cried, every dream you've chased wasn't leading you somewhere new, but guiding you back to yourself? Because here's something no one tells you: you are already whole. Even when you're broken, even when you feel like you're not enough, even when the world tells you you're too much, beneath all the noise, the pain, the guilt, the self-doubt, you are enough. You were enough the moment you took your first breath. You are enough now, and you will be enough when you take your last. But the world doesn't want you to know that. The world profits from your insecurity. It sells you products and dreams that promise wholeness, but only deepen your emptiness. And you're like all of us are, tempted to believe them. We chase the illusion of perfection, not realizing that perfection is the greatest lie ever told. There is no perfect body, perfect job, perfect partner, perfect life. There is only real, and real is messy. Real is flawed, real is human, but real is beautiful. So how do you return to yourself when the world keeps pulling you away? How do you hear your own voice when you're drowning in the opinions of others? You unplug, you pause, you breathe, you listen, not to the world, but to the whisper inside. The one that was there before you learned shame, before you learned fear, before you learned to shrink your light, to fit into places you were never meant to belong. Because the truth is, there's a version of you that's waiting, not a version in the future, a version that's already inside you. Braver, softer, stronger, kinder, more alive, more present. That version doesn't need validation, doesn't fear failure, doesn't run from pain. That version understands that life is not about getting everything right. It's about showing up with your heart open and your soul aligned. But to meet that version, you must release the version you've been performing for the world. The one built on shoulds and have-tos. The one defined by other people's expectations. The one who's afraid to disappoint others, even if it means betraying yourself. You must make the most courageous decision a human being can make, the decision to be yourself fully, unapologetically, and relentlessly. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. You start to walk differently. You start to speak with conviction. You start to move through life not with desperation, but with purpose. Because you're no longer trying to be accepted. You're choosing to belong, not belong to the crowd, belong to yourself, belong to your truth. And yes, that will cost you something. That it will cost you relationships that were never rooted in authenticity. It will cost you opportunities that require you to shrink. It will cost you approval from people who only loved the mask you wore. But what you gain is priceless. You gain freedom, you gain peace, you gain clarity, you gain the unshakable knowing that you don't need to chase anything, that everything you need is already inside you, that you were never meant to fit in, you were meant to stand out. And when you live from that place, you become unstoppable, not because you don't feel fear, but because fear no longer controls you, not because you never fall, but because you rise every time, not because everything is easy, but because you've learned to find meaning even in the pain. This is what it means to awaken from the dream. It doesn't mean life becomes perfect. It means you stop expecting it to be. It doesn't mean you never struggle. It means you stop seeing struggle as a sign of failure. It means you finally accept that life is both beautiful and brutal, that joy and grief often sit side by side, that sometimes the deepest healing comes from the deepest hurt. It means you stop blaming life for being life, and you start dancing with it instead. And in that dance, you learn to flow. You learn to trust the timing of your journey, even when it's unclear. You learn to embrace the unknown, even when it's uncomfortable. You learn to honor the present moment, even when it's painful, because you realize this moment, right here, is sacred, not because it's perfect, not because it's easy, but because it's real, and real is where transformation begins. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to leave you with this. No one else can live your life. No one else can walk your path. No one else can give your life meaning. That is your sacred responsibility, and your sacred privilege. So stop waiting, stop doubting, stop apologizing for your existence. You are here, you are alive, and that means the universe is not done with you yet. Let that truth light a fire inside you. Let it remind you that your life is not random, that your pain is not wasted, that your dreams are not foolish, that your voice matters, that your presence matters, that you matter. Now go out into the world, not to prove yourself, but to express yourself, not to fit in, but to shine, not to impress, but to impact. Because the dream is over, and your real life is just beginning. Asterisk, ladies and gentlemen, there is a profound stillness that exists within every human being, but we're taught to ignore it. We're taught to run toward noise, to chase movement, to always be in motion, as if stillness is a sign of laziness, or a weakness, or worse, irrelevance. But I will tell you something that will change your life if you allow it to settle deep inside you. Stillness is not the absence of action, it is the origin of power. Because in stillness, you meet yourself. You meet the truth that lives behind your busyness. You meet the questions you've been avoiding. You meet the wounds you've wrapped in layers of distraction. You meet the voice you silenced years ago, the one that once told you what you love, what excites you, what matters to you. And maybe, For the first time in your life, you realize that you don't need to become someone new, simply need to return. You see, we spend most of our lives on the outside. We measure ourselves by the world's definitions, by how much we earn, how many people approve of us, how flawless our image appears. But deep down, something always feels off. Because no matter how much success we gather, if it's not aligned with our essence, it feels hollow, like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. It looks like it should satisfy, but it never will. And so we burn out. Not because we're doing too much, but because we're doing too little of what truly feeds us. We collapse, not from the weight of effort, but from the weight of pretending to be happy, pretending to be okay, pretending to want the life we've built. There comes a moment where pretending becomes more painful than the truth. And when that moment arrives, don't fear it, welcome it. Because that's the moment when the mask begins to crack. And when the mask cracks, the light gets in, that it won't be easy. No awakening is. It might begin with discomfort, with tears, with the realization that you've spent years trying to live a life that someone else designed for you, that the values you've followed weren't yours, that the dreams you've pursued were planted in you by a world that never bothered to ask what your soul needed. And yes, that can hurt, but that pain is sacred. It's not punishment, it's a sign that you are waking up. Awakening is not glamorous. It is not an Instagram moment. It is messy. It is raw. It is honest. It is terrifying. But it is the most liberating thing you will ever experience. Because when you awaken, you begin to see through the illusion. You begin to realize that your fear was never a sign to stop, it was an invitation to grow. That your sadness wasn't weakness. It was a cry for realignment. That your failure wasn't the end. It was the beginning of your truth. And from that place of truth, you can finally live. Not for approval, not for applause, but for peace. Peace, not the kind that comes from everything going your way, but the kind that comes from finally coming home to yourself. That is the peace no one can take away from you, because it wasn't given to you by the world. It was rediscovered within. But here's the part that matters the most. Awakening is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice. 1,000 little choices, choosing to sit with your feelings instead of running, choosing to be honest with yourself even when it's painful, choosing to listen to the quiet whisper of your soul even when the world is shouting at you. It's choosing presence over performance, depth over distraction, authenticity over approval. That's how you rise. One choice at a time, and even when you fall back into old habits because you don't shame yourself, you don't give up. You simply come back, again and again, with grace, with compassion, with love, because that's the difference between people who transform and people who stay stuck. It's not perfection, it's permission, the permission to begin again, start again, fall, rise, learn, repeat, and slowly, you begin to see yourself changing, not because someone else told you to, not because you read it in a book, but because you made space for truth, you created room for light. And the more light you allow in, the less space there is for shame, for fear, for the lies that kept you small. You begin to see through the lens of love. Love not just for others, but for yourself. Because you realize that you were never broken. You were only buried under expectations, under pain, under the pressure to perform. But your spirit, it never left. It was always waiting, watching, whispering, come back to who you were before the world told you who to be. When you hear that voice, don't ignore it, follow it, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it leads you away from everything familiar, even if it makes people uncomfortable, especially then, because your truth will make some people leave. It will confuse those who only knew the version of you that you created to survive. But the ones who are meant to walk with you, they'll recognize you, they'll see your soul beneath the changes, and they'll honor your becoming. Let them, and let go of the rest. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be you fully, bravely, loudly, quietly, beautifully you. And yes, there will be days when you forget, days when fear creeps back in, days when the old narrative tries to reclaim you. But don't let that discourage you. Healing is not linear. Growth is not perfect. The spiral will repeat, but you will never be in the same place again. You are wiser now, softer, stronger, and even your pain has shaped you into someone more compassionate. That's the beauty of this journey. You don't just become better, you become truer. And there is no greater success than that. So give yourself permission to evolve, to outgrow old beliefs, to walk away from what no longer aligns, to rewrite the story. This is your life. And while you may not control everything that happens, you do control the meaning you give it. You control the energy you bring, the intention you set, the love you give, and that is everything. Ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with this truth. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not your mistakes. You are not your performance. You are a soul, a breath, a possibility. And the moment you wake up to that, everything changes.